The rain had just started when Morgan Freeman stepped out of the cafe. The scent of wet pavement mixed with the distant hum of traffic, but something else caught his attention. A voice. "Hey, mister, got a second?" The voice was rough, worn, like sandpaper against wood. Morgan turned to see a man sitting on the sidewalk, wrapped in layers of tattered clothing. His eyes, sharp despite the wear of time, locked onto Morgan's with unsettling intensity. "You're him, aren't you?" the man asked, a ghost of a smile forming on his cracked lips. Freeman had been approached countless times before. Fans, admirers, strangers wanting a photo or a moment. But this man wasn't asking for any of that. There was something different. "Depends," Morgan replied, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. "Who do you think I am?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, I know who you are," he said. "You're the man with the voice of God. The man who tells the world what to believe in. But tell me, Morgan Freeman." He paused, his expression shifting from amusement to something much heavier. "Do you believe in second chances?" For the first time in a long time, Morgan felt something stir in his chest. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something real. He studied the man for a long moment, feeling the weight of the question settle on his shoulders. "Son," he said finally, his voice steady but thoughtful. "That depends on who's asking." The man leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Someone who threw away his first one. His eyes darkened, filled with a history Morgan couldn't yet see. The rain fell harder, drumming against the pavement like an unspoken warning. And for the first time in years, Morgan Freeman had no idea what to say next. Morgan Freeman didn't move right away. He had been in this city long enough to know that stories were hidden in every street corner. But something about this man, his question, his tone, felt different. Freeman had spent a lifetime narrating the lives of others. Now, he found himself standing before a man whose life had fallen silent. The man exhaled sharply, his breath visible in the cold night air. "You ever wake up one day and realize you've lost everything that ever mattered?" he asked, his fingers tightening around the frayed edges of his coat. "Not because someone took it, not because life was unfair, but because you threw it away?" Morgan's jaw tightened. He had heard regret in many forms before, on film sets and interviews from people who came to him for wisdom. But this wasn't scripted. This was raw. "What happened?" he asked, his voice softer now, no longer the commanding presence that had narrated the lives of kings and gods, just a man speaking to another. The stranger huffed out a laugh, shaking his head. "I had a family once, a wife, a daughter, a home. The kind of life you see in movies where everything seems damn near perfect." He swallowed hard, looking down at the wet pavement as if the memories had resurfaced in the reflections. "Then I started drinking. Not just a little, not just socially. It became everything." Morgan felt a shift in the air. He had heard this story before in different variations, but it was never just about alcohol. It was about something deeper. "And they left?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The man nodded slowly. "My wife begged me to stop. My daughter, she stopped looking at me the same way. Then one day I came home and they were gone. Left a note on the kitchen table. Said she couldn't let our little girl grow up watching her father disappear into a bottle." His voice cracked just for a second, before he took a deep breath and steadied himself. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of the rain and the distant honking of cars. Then finally the man looked back up at Morgan. "So tell me, Mr. Freeman," he said again, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. "Do you believe in second chances?" Morgan Freeman had spent a lifetime answering impossible questions. But this one felt different. Morgan Freeman let the man's words settle between them, like rain pooling in the cracks of the sidewalk. He could see it now. The ghosts of a life lost, the kind of regret that carves deep into a man's bones. This wasn't just a question. This was a plea, wrapped in shame and hope, waiting for someone to say that the past didn't have to be the end. "You said you threw it away," Morgan finally said, his voice measured, thoughtful. But tell me something if you had the chance to fix it, would you? The man let out a bitter chuckle, rubbing his hands together for warmth. You think I haven't tried? He muttered. Years went by, I got sober, I went looking for them. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Turns out not every door opens back up just because you knock. Morgan studied him, his piercing gaze unreadable. Maybe not, he admitted. But that doesn't mean you stop knocking. The man looked up sharply, something shifting in his expression. He searched Morgan's face as if trying to decide whether he was being fed another empty platitude or if, just maybe, this was something real. You really believe that? Morgan nodded. I do. But the thing about second chances? They don't always come from the same place you lost the first one. His voice was calm, steady, but the weight of experience was behind every word. Sometimes they come from places you never expected, from strangers, from moments like this. The man was silent, his fingers twitching against his coat. Then, for the first time, his voice dropped to almost a whisper. She just turned 17. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. I saw a picture of her online. She's got my eyes, but she doesn't know me. Not anymore. Morgan took a step closer, his voice gentle but firm. Maybe she doesn't know you now. But people change. The man you were back then? That's not the man sitting here in the rain tonight. The man's eyes glistened under the streetlights, though he quickly blinked the moisture away. He had spent years punishing himself, carrying the weight of his mistakes like chains. But now, for the first time, he felt something different, something dangerously close to hope. And Morgan Freeman, the man whose voice had guided millions, had just given one man a reason to believe again. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the cold still clung to the air. The man sat motionless, as if Morgan Freeman's words had cracked something inside him, something that had been sealed shut for years. His fingers twitched at his sides, gripping the frayed edges of his coat. You make it sound easy. He finally muttered, his voice rough. Like all I gotta do is show up and everything will be fine. Morgan shook his head, his expression knowing. No, he said. It won't be easy. And it sure as hell won't be fine overnight. He sighed, glancing up at the dark sky. But let me tell you something, son, regret is a heavy thing, and the longer you carry it, the harder it is to put down. The man scoffed. And what if she hates me? He looked up, his jaw clenched tight. What if I knock on that door and she slams it in my face? What if I make things worse just by showing up? Morgan's eyes softened. He took a deep breath, his voice turning quieter, more intimate. Then at least you'll know, he said. At least you'll have tried. And she'll know that you tried. He let the words sink in before adding, sometimes just knowing someone cared enough to come back, that's enough to change everything. The man swallowed hard. He had spent years convincing himself that he didn't deserve to try, that showing up after so long would only reopen old wounds. But now, for the first time, he wondered if the greater sin was never trying at all. Morgan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather wallet. He flipped through it, then pulled out a crisp $100 bill, folding it neatly between his fingers. This isn't charity, he said, holding it out. It's an investment. In you, in your second chance. The man stared at the bill like it was something foreign, something he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch. His lips parted slightly, his breath shaky. I don't. Take it, Morgan said, his voice firm but kind. Find a way to reach her. Write a letter. Buy a bus ticket. Just do something. The man hesitated for only a second longer before his fingers finally closed around the bill. And in that moment, something changed. Not just in his posture, not just in the way his shoulders squared, but in his eyes. There was something there now. Something that hadn't been there before. Hope. The rain had stopped by the time the man finally stood up. He held the $100 bill in his hands like it was something fragile, something heavier than its weight in paper. He turned it over once, then again, before slipping it carefully into his coat pocket. Morgan Freeman watched him, his face calm but unreadable. He had done what he could, offered words, a choice, a chance, The rest was up to the man standing before him. "So," Morgan said, his voice quieter now, "what are you gonna do?" The man let out a slow breath, his fingers curling and uncurling at his sides. "I don't know," he admitted, "but for the first time in years, I think I want to find out." Morgan nodded, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "That's a start." The man took a step back, then another. He glanced down the empty street as if seeing a path that had been invisible until now. "You probably don't remember this," he said suddenly, looking back at Morgan, "but I saw a movie of yours once, years ago. You played a man who said something that stuck with me." He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head with a smirk. "Funny thing is, I never really believed it until now." Morgan raised an eyebrow. "And what was that?" The man's smirk faded into something softer, something real. "Get busy living, or get busy dying." Morgan felt something shift inside him, a warmth, a weight. He had spoken those words on a movie screen decades ago, but tonight they meant something different. Tonight they weren't just lines from a script. They were a lifeline thrown into the dark. The man nodded once, almost like a silent thank you, then turned and started walking. His steps were slow, at first hesitant but then steadier, stronger. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Morgan stood there for a long time, watching him disappear into the city, into a future that wasn't written yet. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something deep in his chest. Something steady, something right. Because tonight, in the middle of a rainy street, beneath the dim glow of streetlights, he had done something that mattered. He had given a man his second chance. Life is full of second chances, but only if we're brave enough to take them. What would you have done in this situation? Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. Because sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. See you in the next one. Subscribe now and never miss a story that matters.